Once upon a time in the sprawling galactic council chambers, 1,000 eyes, each belonging to a different species, turned to the center stage as the alien princess ascended the platform. Her regal robes shimmered like molten silver, her antennae quivered with determination, and her voice echoed with the kind of conviction that could silence the universe. "I stand before you all," she began, her voice trembling with both excitement and trepidation, "to express my eternal gratitude and my love." The room erupted in murmurs, clicks, and hisses of astonishment. The princess's declarations were rare, but this one? This one was about a human. Her lavender eyes scanned the council members, each of them oscillating between shock and barely concealed laughter. It was years ago, during the Battle of Zarkon's Pass. The humans were dismissed as weak, primitive beings. Yet one among them, a soldier, risked his life to save mine. The murmurs grew louder. Someone in the back, a rotund alien with 12 eyes, laughed outright. "A human? Saved you? Surely, this is a misunderstanding." But the princess continued unperturbed. "He fought valiantly, using a weapon so crude it could barely qualify as functional. Yet his courage burned brighter than the nebulae of the Orion Belt. Without hesitation, he shielded me from an explosion that would have ended my life. And from that day, my heart has belonged to him." "Heart? Do humans even have compatible organs with your kind?" a lanky amphibian delegate quipped, prompting scattered chuckles. The princess ignored the jest. "This human's name is Jack. And I have spent every year since then searching for him. Today, I am pleased to announce that I have located him on Earth." She paused, her voice rising with pride. "I am bringing him here to be by my side. To be my partner." The room fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the soft hum of the translation devices struggling to convert her alien tongue into 100 languages. A counselor leaned forward, his eye stalks vibrating. "Princess, surely you jest. You, a royal of the Zytharian Empire, plan to involve yourself with a species known for their barbaric tendencies. This is preposterous." "It is not preposterous," she snapped, her regal demeanor slipping into the fiery passion of someone truly in love. "Jack is brave, noble, and resourceful. He embodies the kind of spirit our galaxy needs. And I will not stand here and let you mock him without ever having met him." A pudgy representative whispered to his companion, "This Jack must be some kind of war hero." Little did they know, back on Earth, Jack was grumbling about his broken tractor and chasing a particularly stubborn chicken around his yard. The princess pressed on. "He is not just a hero. He is my hero. He saved my life and, in doing so, taught me the value of human tenacity and loyalty. Qualities that our empire has taken for granted for too long." The council chamber broke into a cacophony of protests. Dignitaries argued, advisors whispered in hushed tones, and one overly dramatic avian delegate fainted on the spot. A towering reptilian counselor slammed his claw on the table. "This is a breach of protocol. Interspecies relations of this kind could destabilize the galactic order. And yet here we are." The princess's voice rang clear, slicing through the noise. "Aren't we meant to embrace unity? To celebrate diversity? Jack may be human, but his actions have proven him worthy of our respect. And I will not let bureaucracy stand in the way of what my heart knows to be true." The murmurs softened, but skepticism lingered in the air like a thick fog. "Very well, princess," said an elderly counselor, her voice weary but composed. "If you insist on pursuing this relationship, then you must bring this human before us. We shall judge for ourselves whether he is deserving of such honor." The princess raised her chin, defiant and determined. "He is not a prize to be judged. But if it will quiet your doubts, so be it. Jack will come. And when he does, you will see the kind of courage and character humanity is capable of." With that, she turned on her heel and strode out of the chamber, leaving the council in stunned silence. As the grand doors closed behind her, the delegates erupted once more, their discussions peppered with disbelief, confusion, and more than a little curiosity. Meanwhile, across the galaxy on Earth, Jack's life was about to be turned upside down. But for now, He was blissfully unaware, muttering under his breath about how ungrateful chickens could be. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow and stared at the pile of feed bags in his barn. Life on his little patch of farmland was simple, predictable, and exactly how he liked it. No alarms, no intergalactic battles, and definitely no bizarre alien royalty showing up uninvited. The most drama he'd dealt with in months was convincing his neighbor not to park his rusty truck on the property line. He stepped outside, squinting at the afternoon sun, only to see a strange shadow passing over the fields. At first, he assumed it was a weather balloon or some experimental military drone, until the ground shook. Dust rose in thick clouds, and before he could curse the latest inconvenience, an enormous silver craft descended onto his cornfield, obliterating rows of perfectly healthy crops. "What in the actual hell?" Jack muttered, stumbling backward as the ship's landing gear crushed the remnants of his hard work. The hatch opened with a hiss, releasing a staircase that shimmered in the sunlight. At the top stood the most otherworldly figure Jack had ever seen. Draped in flowing, radiant robes, her violet skin and glowing lavender eyes made her look like a deity straight out of a bad sci-fi flick. And then, to his horror, she smiled directly at him. "Jack," she declared, her voice musical and filled with warmth. "It is you. At last we meet again, my savior." Jack blinked, frozen in place, before managing to spit out, "Lady, I don't know who you are, but you owe me for that corn." The princess descended the stairs, each step brimming with theatrical grandeur. Behind her, an entourage of alien attendants followed, all carrying peculiar objects Jack couldn't begin to identify. One tripped and dropped something that looked suspiciously like a glowing hamster wheel. Jack ignored it, focusing instead on the alien woman now standing uncomfortably close to him. "You do not remember me?" she asked, her antennae drooping slightly. "I am Princess Zelia of the Zytharian Empire. You saved my life during the Battle of Zarkon's Pass. I have journeyed across the stars to express my gratitude and," she hesitated, then added with a shy smile, "to claim what is rightfully mine." "Rightfully yours?" Jack echoed, stepping back instinctively. "Lady, I think you've got the wrong guy." "Nonsense," Zelia insisted, stepping closer. "It was you, Jack. You may not recognize the significance of your actions, but I do. Your bravery changed the course of my life." Jack rubbed the back of his neck, trying to piece together her words. He vaguely remembered Zarkon's Pass, an alien skirmish he'd been caught up in during a tour of duty. But bravery? No. The only thing he'd done was hit a big, red button in a panic. That button just happened to activate the shields around the alien princess's ship, saving her and half her crew. Hardly the hero she was describing. "Look," Jack said, holding up his hands, "I'm flattered. Really. But I'm just a guy who farms and yells at chickens. You've got the wrong savior. You cannot deny fate," Zelia countered, her eyes sparkling with determination. "I have declared my love for you before the Galactic Council. Our union will bring unity to the galaxy." "Union?" Jack choked. "Are you asking me to wait? No. You declared what?" Her attendants, who had been busily setting up what looked like a glowing throne in the middle of his barnyard, all froze, staring at him with a mixture of pity and awe. Zelia, however, seemed unfazed. "Yes," she said, her tone unwavering. "We are destined to be together. It has been foretold." Jack pinched the bridge of his nose, praying this was some elaborate prank orchestrated by the universe to ruin his day. "Listen, Princess Zelia, or whatever your name is. I'm just a guy. A guy with a tractor and a very limited tolerance for space nonsense. I'm not your hero, and I'm definitely not destined to do anything." "But you are," she said, her voice rising with urgency. "I have spent years preparing for this moment. The Council may doubt your worth, but I do not. You are everything they need to see. Your humanity, your strength, is what will bind our worlds together. Lady, I've got about 3 functioning brain cells before my coffee kicks in," Jack replied. "And this is way above my pay grade." Her attendants exchanged nervous glances. One finally approached, bowing low before Jack and speaking in a voice filled with reverence. "Forgive us, great savior, but the princess speaks the truth. Your actions have become legendary within the Empire. It is said you wielded a weapon of incredible power and faced the enemy without fear." Jack snorted. "A weapon? You mean the wrench I threw at their control panel before running for cover? Yeah, real legendary." The attendant's face fell, but Zelia didn't falter. "Jack," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "You may not see it, but you are extraordinary. I have come to show you the life you deserve, a life at my side." Jack stared at her, torn between irritation and disbelief. Finally, he sighed. "Fine. You want to thank me? Fix my corn. And take your throne thing out of my barn." Her smile widened. "Your humor is as charming as I remember." "It's not humor," Jack grumbled. "It's basic crop management." Before he could argue further, a sharp beeping sound interrupted them. One of the attendants stepped forward, holding a device that emitted frantic, flashing lights. "Your Majesty," the attendant said nervously. "It appears the Galactic Council has sent emissaries to observe the Savior. They will arrive shortly." Jack's jaw tightened. "Great. More space nonsense." Zelia turned to him, her expression unwavering. "Do not worry, Jack. I will handle everything. You only need to be yourself. That's what I'm afraid of," he muttered under his breath as she turned to organize her entourage. Somehow, Jack had the distinct feeling his quiet, predictable life was about to be obliterated, just like his corn. Jack sat on the porch of his farmhouse, sipping coffee from a chipped mug as the alien entourage bustled around his property. His chickens, thoroughly confused by the sudden invasion, clucked nervously in the corner of the yard. The morning's chaos had given him a splitting headache, and now there was talk of emissaries? This day couldn't get worse. Or so he thought. The first emissary arrived in what could only be described as the galactic equivalent of a limousine, a sleek, glowing craft that parked itself unceremoniously on the remains of his cornfield. The door opened with a theatrical hiss, and out stepped an alien who looked like he'd walked straight out of a soap opera. Tall, impeccably dressed in shimmering fabrics, and oozing charisma, the emissary greeted Zelia with a flourish before turning his attention to Jack. "Ah, the human hero," the emissary said, his voice smooth as silk. "I am Syrian, ambassador of diplomacy, and if I may be so bold, an admirer of the princess's fine taste." Jack stared at him, unimpressed. "Great. Another space politician. Look, Syrian, if you're here to talk, I'm not interested. If you're here to help, grab a shovel. The barn needs cleaning." Syrian blinked, clearly not expecting such a response. A sense of humor. How quaint. Jack leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Oh, you haven't seen half of it." Zelia stepped between them, her radiant smile as unwavering as ever. "Syrian, what brings you to Earth? Surely the Council didn't send you just to spectate." "Spectate?" Syrian chuckled. "Hardly. I'm here to ensure this arrangement proceeds smoothly. After all, the Council has concerns about the compatibility of your chosen partner." Jack snorted. "Compatibility? What is this, a dating show?" Ignoring him, Syrian continued. "I am here to observe and, if necessary, offer alternatives. You see, Princess, while this human may have performed an act of heroism, the question remains whether he is truly worthy of your station." "Worthy?" Jack repeated, setting his mug down. "Buddy, I didn't ask for any of this. If anything, you lot are crashing my life." Syrian smiled, a little too smugly for Jack's liking. "Which is why I've taken the liberty of inviting someone else to join us." Before Jack could ask what that meant, another ship appeared in the sky, smaller but no less ostentatious. It landed with a precision that put the first emissary's craft to shame, and outstepped what could only be described as Syrian's alien counterpart. Tall, sleek, and wearing a grin that practically screamed competition. "Ah, Jorvax," Syrian said, spreading his arms. "How delightful of you to join us." Jorvax bowed, first to Zelia, then to Jack. "I have heard much about you, human. he said, his voice deep and resonant. It is an honor to meet the savior of our princess. Jack raised an eyebrow. Yeah, sure. Honor's all yours. Zelia, visibly irritated, stepped forward. What is the meaning of this? I did not request additional emissaries. Merely a precaution, Syrian said smoothly. Should this human prove unsuitable, Jorvax is prepared to step in as a more appropriate candidate. Jack's eyes narrowed. Wait a minute. You brought this guy to replace me? Not replace, Syrian corrected. Merely supplement. After all, the galaxy's stability is at stake. Jack stood, his patience wearing thin. Listen here, Syrian, or whatever your name is. I don't know how you do things out there in space, but on Earth, we don't just show up and start deciding people's lives for them. If Zelia wants me here, then I'm here. If she doesn't, I'll gladly go back to yelling at my chickens. But I'm not about to compete in some intergalactic popularity contest. Jorvax tilted his head, clearly amused. A bold statement. Perhaps there is merit to this human after all. Zelia, her expression softening, stepped beside Jack. There is no competition, she said firmly. I have made my choice. Be that as it may, Syrian said, his tone icy. The Council will require proof of his capabilities. Jack threw his hands in the air. Capabilities? I'm not auditioning for a job here. Jorvax smirked. Think of it as a test of character. Think of it as a colossal waste of my time. Jack muttered, but it was clear the decision had already been made. Over the next hour, Syrian and Jorvax subjected Jack to a series of increasingly absurd challenges, each designed to measure his worthiness. The first involved deciphering an alien language, which Jack solved by scribbling random lines on a piece of paper and calling it abstract art. The second was a test of physical endurance, where he flatly refused to participate, claiming his knees weren't what they used to be. The final challenge, however, took the cake. Jorvax presented a strange, pulsating orb and announced that Jack must tame it to prove his strength. Jack stared at the orb, then at Jorvax. You want me to tame a glowing space jelly bean? He asked, deadpan. It is a test of willpower, Jorvax explained. Jack sighed, grabbed the orb, and promptly threw it as hard as he could into the field. It landed with a dull thud and went dark. There, he said, brushing his hands off. Consider it tamed. Zelia, to Jack's surprise, burst out laughing. The sound was melodic and genuine, cutting through the tension like sunlight through clouds. Even Jorvax seemed momentarily stunned. Syrian, however, was less amused. This is outrageous. He has no respect for tradition. No, Zelia said, still smiling. He has respect for himself. And that is what makes him worthy. Jack blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. Thanks, I guess. The emissaries exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unsure how to proceed. For the first time all day, Jack felt like he'd won a small victory, however ridiculous the circumstances. He didn't know what the council would decide, but one thing was clear: if this was their idea of diplomacy, he was in for a long, strange ride. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Jack found himself standing in the middle of what used to be his cornfield, now transformed into an alien circus. Floating drones buzzed around him, projecting live feeds of his every move back to the Galactic Council. Syrian, still insufferably smug, hovered nearby, while Jorvax had taken up a position of silent observation, his arms crossed as though he were waiting for something monumental to happen. Zelia stood at Jack's side, her presence a calming force amid the chaos. The Council is watching closely, she said softly. They need to see that you are more than what they assume. Jack scratched the back of his neck. What exactly do they assume? That I can't hold a pitchfork without stabbing myself? They believe you are unworthy, she admitted, her tone tinged with frustration. But they do not see what I see. Before Jack could respond, a loud hum filled the air. The largest craft yet descended from the sky, its sheer size casting a shadow over the entire property. The ship landed with a thunderous crash, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the craft emerged a towering figure clad in ceremonial armor, flanked by a retinue of guards. This was no emissary, this was the council's enforcer, a figure whose sole purpose was to maintain order through fear. The enforcer's voice boomed, amplified by some unseen technology. The Galactic Council has deemed this union a threat to interstellar stability. The human must prove his worth or face exile from this alliance. Jack raised an eyebrow. Exile? From what? You guys just showed up and wrecked my cornfield. I didn't sign up for any of this. Silence! The enforcer barked. You will participate in the final trial, or the council will declare this arrangement null and void. Zelia stepped forward, her voice ringing with defiance. This is unnecessary. Jack has already proven himself through his actions, both past and present. The enforcer ignored her, his gaze fixed on Jack. The trial will commence immediately. Jack sighed, his patience hanging by a thread. Fine. Let's get this over with. What's the trial? Arm wrestling? A spelling bee? Do I have to eat something weird? The enforcer's helmeted head tilted slightly, as though confused by Jack's sarcasm. You will face the trial of truth, a test of resolve and clarity under duress. Great, Jack muttered. Sounds like a therapy session with extra steps. The enforcer gestured, and two guards brought forward a device that resembled a cross between a helmet and a blender. They placed it on Jack's head, securing it tightly. A low hum began to emanate from the device, and Jack felt a strange tingling sensation across his scalp. This device will extract your deepest truths and project them for all to see, the enforcer explained. Your honesty will determine your fate. Jack shot a glance at Zelia. You didn't tell me this was going to turn into an alien lie detector test. I didn't know, she said, worry etched across her face. The device whirred to life, and holographic images began to form in the air around Jack. At first, they were blurry, indistinct shapes, but they quickly sharpened into vivid, three-dimensional projections. The first image was of Jack standing in the middle of a battlefield, surrounded by chaos. He was younger, dressed in a tattered uniform, and clearly terrified. The moment captured was unmistakable, the Battle of Zarkon's Pass. Jack watched as his holographic self stumbled, fell, and accidentally activated the shield that had saved Zelia's life. The scene froze, and Jack couldn't help but snort. There it is! My big heroic moment! The council members watching remotely began to murmur, their voices crackling through the drone feeds. Sirian smirked, clearly pleased with what he perceived as Jack's incompetence. The hologram shifted, now displaying Jack's current life. It showed him waking up at dawn, feeding his chickens, fixing his tractor, and cursing at stubborn equipment. The simplicity of his existence stood in stark contrast to the grandeur of the Zytharian Empire. Jack glanced at Zelia, expecting disappointment, but her expression was one of quiet admiration. This is who you are, she said softly. It is not weakness, it is authenticity. The hologram changed again, this time displaying a scene from just hours earlier. Jack was standing in his yard, surrounded by aliens, refusing to back down despite the absurdity of the situation. His words echoed through the projection, asterisk. If Zelia wants me here, then I'm here. If she doesn't, I'll gladly go back to yelling at my chickens. Asterisk. The council fell silent. Even Sirian's smug grin faltered. The enforcer's posture shifted, his imposing presence seemingly less threatening. Jack sighed, removing the helmet and tossing it to the ground. There. You got your truth. I'm not some galactic savior. I'm just a guy who happens to be stubborn enough not to quit when things get tough. Take it or leave it. The enforcer turned to Zelia. Princess, you have seen his truth. Do you still believe this human is worthy? Zelia stepped forward, her voice steady and unwavering. I do. Jack's strength lies not in grand gestures or hollow displays of power. It lies in his honesty, his resilience, and his unwavering sense of self. These are the qualities that make him worthy, not just of me, but of our Empire's respect. The enforcer regarded her for a long moment before nodding. Very well. The Council will honor your decision. A cheer erupted from Zelia's entourage, while Jack simply let out a relieved breath. So, we're done here? Zelia smiled, her eyes glowing with gratitude. Yes, Jack. We're done. As the alien ships began to depart, Jack looked around at the mess they'd left behind: flattened crops, scattered debris, and confused chickens. He turned to Zelia, who was still beaming at him. So, he said, scratching his head. You're staying, huh? If you'll have me, she replied. Jack shrugged, a small smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Guess I've got room for one more. Just don't touch my chickens. Zelia laughed, and for the first time that day, Jack felt like maybe, just maybe, his life was about to get a little more interesting.